Hello everybody, this is Con and you're looking at the all-new Peugeot 3008 that was recently launched in Malaysia. Today I am driving the Proton Iris, specifically the improved 2017 version. Hi guys, so today I am driving the newly updated 2019 Volvo XC90 of the new Mitsubishi Triton. Okay, to recap some facts, Triton here, 2.4 litre MyVac turbo diesel, one. Okay guys, so it's 53 days since start of MCO. I think today the Health Director General finally saw fit to take a break. There was no Health Ministry press conference today, and well, I think the man earned his break for sure. Okay, yeah. So as you know, recently we've been doing a lot of Q&A videos, but today I thought that I'd start a new series of videos. Okay, whilst we are still stuck at home. Now it's going to be a while before we get to review cars again. All right. I mean, even if MCO lifts on 12th of May, we may not be getting a test car assigned to us anytime soon, because I'm sure within this period there will be a lot of SOPs before a car company can hand us a test car, if that is even allowed. So yeah, it may be a while before we have a chance to review any car. But at the same time, right, having done this for 12 years, I do miss reviewing cars, and yeah, I suddenly just thought of doing this since I already have that much experience doing car reviews, right? Why not look back now at my past and select some of the more popular cars that I've reviewed in the past as well, and share with you guys what I said about those cars back then. And yeah, and in case if you guys happen to be looking at that specific car for a second-hand purchase today, that'll be great. Okay, or if you guys think of any particular car that you want me to go back and and reread what I wrote back then in the past, do let me know. Okay, so to kick off today, I'm going to start off with the Honda Civic FD. That was the 8th generation Civic, the most popular one, widely regarded to be the best Civic ever, until the current one, the 10th generation, rolled along, and that's where the debate is still ongoing. Okay, but so the Civic FD was launched in 2006, and it was on sale till 2012. In 2009, they facelifted the car. So I remember back then when it was first launched, the Civic FD, it created a big splash. I mean, look at that car. Even today, 14 years after it's launched, it still looks like a car from the future. That thing looks futuristic. Outside there's that sleek design, and inside you look in, there's that the 2-layer instrument cluster with a digital speedometer. It all looks very canggih, even though actually now that we know a bit more about cars, right now you look at it, right, actually it's very simple tech behind. But Honda really aced the presentation of that car, and rightly, during that time, the Civic firmly established itself as a benchmark of the C segment. It became the default C segment car. The Civic owned the C segment. So in a way, so now, right, when we talk about the C segment, we refer to it as the Civic segment. Every competitor in that segment now has to benchmark itself against whatever, you know, the current generation Honda Civic is. Okay, certainly the present 10th generation Civic is still doing the same. It is still, I would say, the class leading product of the segment. Okay, but you really can trace back to this 8th generation, and maybe even before that, the 6th generation Civic, that really put this nameplate right at the top of the class. So I remember back then when it was launched, one of the headlines that Honda was keen to push out was that time they launched the car with the new 1.8 liter iVTEC engine, which was, interestingly enough, it was a single cam engine. So, you know, nowadays every engine out there is twin cam. The one Honda, for reasons known only to themselves, decided to go back to a single cam design, and their headline for that engine was, it gives you the power of a 2-liter engine but the fuel economy of a 1.5. And I think that engine now, today, that engine really has proven itself, because 14 years from its original introduction, it is still powering the current generation Civic. They are also using it in the HRV as well. So the engine makes 140 PS. I think back those days it's pretty very impressive figures for a 1.8. I think even today, for a 1.8 NA engine, that is in the ballpark. Okay, it's not, it's that engine, it may be old, but it is not even close to being irrelevant just yet. All right, but even that, right, even with that claim, they still had the 2-liter option as well with 155 PS. So pricing at that time when it was launched, the 1.8 was selling for what, 118,000 ringgit. The 2-liter was selling for 132,000 ringgit. All right, and the 2-liter was the K20 engine twin cam. Yes. Now another differentiating point between the 1.8 and the 2-liter is that besides their power outputs, they also had different steering systems. The 1.8 ran on a hydraulic power steering, whereas the 2.0 had electric power steering system. Okay, both engines were paired to a 5-speed automatic transmission. Those days, class-leading stuff. But of course, now today with 6-speed, 7-speed, we don't find it impressive anymore. But at that time, that was a class-leading feature. And of course, they also had the Civic Hybrid, which when launch time was sold as 162,000 ringgit. Then hybrid incentive, the price dropped to 130,000 ringgit, and then dropped again to 110,000 ringgit. Of course, the Civic FD generation won't be complete without us mentioning the Type R, right, which we call now the FD2R when we're referring to the Civic Type R lineage, right? This specific version of the Type R, we call it the FD2R. And Malaysia is the only country other than Japan to officially receive the FD2R. And if you were to compare the FD2R with the global Civic Type R at that time, which was, I think, the FN2R, that was based on... You want what? Excuse me, guys. Be back.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, so if you were to compare the FD2R versus the global FN2R that's based on the European Civic hatchback, naturally the FD2R is actually the superior car. Firstly, it has rear double wishbone suspension compared to the European Civic's torsion beam. Okay, that gives it a handling advantage, and also the K20 engine in the FD2R is tuned to slightly higher outputs versus the European Type R. The European Type R is actually a softer, more day-to-day friendly, tune, whereas the FD2R is a way more hardcore car. I remember first I actually drove the FD2R only once ever in my lifetime. That was at a Honda event in Sepang, and I have to say it was memorable. And I think the most memorable aspect of the experience really was the gear change. You know how Honda is legendary for their manual gearboxes, and yeah, I have to say that gear change ranks easily as one of the most satisfying manual gear changes I've ever had the pleasure of trying. Okay, of course, in Sepang setting, you really experience the FD2R in its best. Never driven the car in open roads, but we all know that the FD2 is very, very harsh riding. So out in real world driving, living with that car is a bit of a compromise. So I really salute our friend Sean, who drove an FD2R with us all the way to Enduro and back from last year. Sean, well done. Okay, amazing. Okay, so okay, now coming back to the regular what you call that, the regular Civics. Okay, when I joined the industry in 2009, it was just after the Civic was facelifted. So my first time driving the Civic FD was already the facelift model. I didn't get to try the 1.8, only drove the 2-liter, and later on drove the hybrid as well. I remember back then I was with AutoWorld. It's very funny. I titled the review I titled it "The Perfect Mate." Who titles reviews like that? But yeah, I was much younger at that time, and basically at that time I likened the Civic to what would be your perfect wife. Okay, a partner that does everything you ask of it without putting a foot wrong. And I think that really describes what the Civic offers, because I've come to look at the Civic as a car that you have. It is I would say, the perfect all-rounder of the segment, with very few flaws, but it just does everything you ask of it very, very well. So this is not, if you were to take an analogy of a student doing an exam, this is not a kid that scores an A plus here, an A plus there, and every grade, but this is probably the one that scores an A in every subject. Okay, maybe scores 85, 90 marks every subject, but never achieving 100 for anything. So it does everything very well, but not particularly outstanding in any aspect. Okay, so that time let's look at some of the let's pick out some of the comments that I made of that car. I think I'll jump straight to the driving impressions, but I'll put a link to I'll put a link to this article in the description section. You guys can go and have a read. Wow, I actually drove that back at that time. I had the car for 4 days, and I actually covered 800 kilometers with it. Wow, I went to Genting, Bukit Tinggi, and Putrajaya. Actually, come think of it, oh yeah, I remember at that time I had an event in Genting. I drove the car up, we stayed a night there, and I think next day even drove to Bukit Tinggi. Then after that, come back, went to Putrajaya to do some photo shoots, and then I returned the car. Okay, so sitting down, comfortable position, all controls within easy reach, and that really is typical Honda. All right, ergonomics are Honda ergonomics, always flawless. All my life reviewing Honda cars, I've never had any ergonomic complaints of their vehicles. But this time with the Civic FD, actually, I actually did say one thing: the headrest was angled too far forward. Yeah, I think the headrest pushing too far forward, so I couldn't really angle my head back at the time. And the footrest, which somehow I wasn't able to rest my left feet properly at that time. The dashboard build quality was good for my standards at those days lah. But I think if I were to re-evaluate that today, I would probably comment by saying it's well put together. The materials are solid, good fit and finish, but not, you know, Mazda 3 level kind of. There's not much in terms of plushness there. Now, one observation I made was that when you drive with the lights on, the dashboard heats up. That was true with my test car at the time. The dashboard panel, the center panel, felt hot to the touch. So guys, those of you with the Civic FD, can you verify this? Is this true? When you drive with the lights on, does the dash feel hot? So the other thing I mentioned is that the engine gives good acceleration. Gearbox also responds well to kickdowns, just that the sound isn't a very pleasant kind. It's just one of those when you rev the engine, it just it pulls with a high pitched shriek rather than a very engaging vroom sound. So but it's an effective performer, just not a very engaging one. Okay, the gearbox for the standards of its time, very smooth, good kick down. And one thing that I also observed was that the grade logic control, which means that when the car detects that you are going on a downslope, it automatically selects a lower gear to give you engine braking, which is something that is a character that I appreciate in automatic transmissions. Gives you better control when you're going downhill. But some people they find that feeling of the gears holding you back to be a little unsettling. But really, that is to me, that is a good gearbox programming that gives you better control and better handling when you are going down the slope. All right, 2.0 there has paddle shifters, so that's another plus. The suspension, so I mentioned that it's a overall a decent balance between ride and handling, but not quite as capable as the Ford Focus. And I'm not talking about the current gen Ford Focus, I'm talking about the previous gen Ford Focus, where there was the one with either the TDCI or the underpowered 2.0 Duratec engine. Okay, and the 2.0 Civic here comes with 17-inch Michelin Pilot Preseda tires, which fantastic grip on dry roads, but in the wet, gotta be careful, because even with stability control on, there was one instance when I was going downhill at Genting, I encountered lift-off oversteer. Okay, so that's definitely something to watch out. But yeah, overall, very little to complain about this car. By the standards of its time, it's really a segment. It sets the standards of its segment. But I also mentioned that there's a slight firmness in the ride, even though it's not quite bone jarring. So if you were to compare to, say, the Corolla Altis or the Nissan Sylphy of that time, then those would be more comfortable options versus the Civic. Now, of course, the Civic, in summation, I said that this is a car that is overall a good all-rounder compared to its rivals. So what we have here is that these are the rivals. So you have the feel of rivals, and the Civic does everything that you ask of it reasonably well. All right, very well, actually. I would say very well. Rivals exceed it in some areas, but they don't provide the same balance, all-round balance of abilities that the Civic manages. Okay, so the criticisms at that is that at that time the price was a little on the high side, and the Civic for the FD was lacking in a number of features. It doesn't have auto headlights, it doesn't have dual zone climate control, doesn't have rear aircon blowers, not even in the 2-liter model. But overall, it's a very well balanced car, and rightfully it is the segment's benchmark, okay, for that time, and you know that tradition continues today. So overall, the Civic is reliable, okay, no major issues. Service the car regularly, but I do hear that suspension components wear out fast, and that can be costly to fix, especially with the rears, because you have rear double wishbones, so there are a lot of bushes and rubber parts that will wear off, that will require frequent replacement. Okay, now I also did some checks on the used car values of the Civic at present day, and so what I see here is that for the, you know, as you say, the Civic has always been very strong with its resale value. So what I checked is that early batch 07 cars, you can have the prices start from as low as 20,000 ringgit. Okay, but as you go up, the hybrid, okay, hybrid models with you know, the hybrids usually their resale value isn't as good as non-hybrids. So the newest example of a Civic hybrid that I can see here is a 2009 unit going for 28,500 ringgit. Now a same year 1.8 or 2-liter model starts at 30,000, and that's one thing I observed. As you look through the listings, you notice that between 1.8 and 2-liter, there's no real difference in the resale value. So it's really a choice which engine you prefer, but of course, given the same budget, why not go for the larger engine, which also comes with a bit better features versus the 1.8, even though the 1.8 on its own is a very good engine and very decent performer. Okay, now of course you go the other end of the food chain, you arrive at the Civic FD2R, the Type R. If you're looking for an original Type R, the prices have been rock solid. An original Type R still costs at least 100,000 ringgit. You find anything less than that, chances are it's converted. So that car started life as a 1.8 or a 2.0. One of the previous owners brought in a half car from Japan and transplanted all the things in there. So how do you tell a Civic FD 2R that's genuine versus that one that's converted from a 1.8 or a 2-liter? So a good conversion job, the fella would have probably transplanted a whole interior as well, complete with the dashboard. So checking the instrument cluster is not going to help. One immediate telltale that you can look at is the boot lid, because the regular Civic has a keyhole at the number plate area, whereas the Type R does not. Okay, so that is one area that most converters will likely overlook, and that is the one thing that you want to look at to immediately differentiate whether you're looking at a real deal Civic Type R or just a conversion. Okay, so yeah, that's all I have to say for the Honda Civic FD. Yeah, so for my next coming video, I'll be going back to Q&As, answering your questions. So if you have any car buying advice that you want, just drop me a line, ask in the comment section below, and I'll respond to you in the next video. Or if you want me to revisit any of my previous cars that I have reviewed during my time in Auto World, Car List, yeah, drop me a line as well, and I will just dig through my archives to find a review and discuss that car with you again. Okay, so as I've always been saying throughout this MCO period, guys, stay home, stay safe. We can do this together, and once all this is over, see you guys on the road. All right, take care. Holy shit, did I actually write that?